Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with a simple truth. If you have ever felt like an outsider, if you have ever been rejected not for doing wrong but for simply being yourself, understand this. It wasn't because you were flawed. It was because you refused to wear the mask that others found comfortable. Authenticity is not a virtue that is universally celebrated. It is a weapon, a force, a disruptor. The world does not reward those who challenge its illusions, it punishes them. The moment you decide to live truthfully, you become a problem. For those who thrive on pretension, why? Because people fear what they cannot control. When you operate from a place of deep conviction, you refuse to be swayed by the tides of public opinion. You refuse to participate in the unspoken games of flattery, conformity, and self-deception. And this makes you dangerous. The cost of authenticity is often loneliness. There will be times when you stand alone, misunderstood, and even resented. But make no mistake, this is not evidence of failure. It is proof that you have stepped beyond the reach of mediocrity. The masses will always prefer the comfort of lies over the discomfort of truth. But you were never meant to be one of them. Yet here's the paradox. When you embrace your true self, you do not remain alone forever. Because eventually, the right people, those who value truth, integrity, and depth, will find you. And those who could not handle your authenticity, they were never meant to walk alongside you in the first place. So do not fear rejection. Fear instead the slow, soul-crushing decay of a life lived in pretense. Be real, be bold, and let the world deal with the consequences of your existence. Because you were never meant to be tamed. Authenticity is a threat to the status quo. Authenticity is a powerful force, but it is not one that is universally welcomed. In fact, if you have ever felt alienated for simply being yourself, it is likely because the people around you were more invested in maintaining the status quo than in embracing the truth. Society, whether at the macro or micro level, is built on shared illusions, unspoken rules that dictate how we should behave, what we should believe, and how much of ourselves we are allowed to express. And when you refuse to conform, when you present yourself honestly and without pretense, you become a disruptor of that carefully constructed order. Why does this happen? Why does authenticity, something so deeply human and natural, provoke such resistance? The answer is simple. Most people do not want to confront what is real. They prefer comfort over truth, familiarity over depth, and social harmony over individual integrity. The moment you reject the mask that everyone else has agreed to wear, you expose the entire game for what it is, a performance. And nothing unsettles people more than the realization that they too are actors in a play they did not even consciously choose to be part of. In every social structure, there exists an implicit agreement. We behave in predictable ways so that society remains stable. This applies to workplaces, families, friend groups, and entire cultures. There is an expectation that we will conform to unspoken codes, politeness that borders on dishonesty, opinions that are tailored to be palatable, emotions that are filtered to avoid making others uncomfortable. The moment you step outside of these expectations, you disrupt the entire system. Consider what happens when a person refuses to sugarcoat the truth. They are labeled harsh or difficult. When someone refuses to play along with groupthink, they are deemed a problem. When a person chooses their own path instead of following the prescribed one, they are called reckless, selfish, or even arrogant. It is not because these actions are inherently wrong, but because they highlight the artificial nature of the structures most people depend on for their sense of stability. This is why those who are deeply authentic often experience pushback. You do not even have to say anything controversial to make others uncomfortable. Your mere existence is enough. When you are fully yourself, unapologetic, and unafraid, you remind others of the parts of themselves they have repressed. You become a living contradiction to the life of compromise they have settled for. And rather than confront that unsettling realization, many would rather reject you than acknowledge their own self-betrayal. There is a reason why history remembers the radicals, the truth-tellers, and the nonconformists as visionaries, but only long after their time, because in the present moment, society sees them as threats. People like Socrates, Galileo, and countless others were not celebrated for their authenticity while they were alive. They were resisted, ostracized, and even punished. It was only in retrospect that the world recognized their value. So, if you have ever felt that people could not handle your authenticity, understand that you are not the problem. You are simply living in a world that prefers illusions over honesty. And in such a world, being real is an act of defiance. But here's the truth. Society does not change because of those who conform. It evolves because of those who refuse to. So, do not shrink yourself to fit the expectations of others. Do not silence your voice to make others comfortable. And most importantly, do not trade your authenticity for social acceptance. Because the only thing more painful than rejection is the slow death of the soul that comes from living a life that is not your own. People fear what they cannot control. One of the most unsettling truths about human nature is that people are not afraid of what they understand. They are afraid of what they do not control. And this is why authenticity, true, unwavering authenticity, makes people uncomfortable. When you are deeply rooted in who you are, when your words, actions, and beliefs are not dictated by the approval of others, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is a threat to those who rely on control to feel secure. Think about how most people navigate their relationships, whether personal, professional, or social. There is an unspoken exchange taking place. I will behave in a way that makes you comfortable, and in return you will accept me. This is the foundation of social order. People expect you to filter yourself, to adjust your personality, to speak in ways that align with their expectations, not because they hate you, but because they find security in knowing how you will act. But what happens when you don't follow that script? What happens when you are not desperate for approval? When you don't edit your personality to fit someone else's standards? You break the unspoken contract. You demonstrate that you are not playing by the same rules as everyone else. And that is when people start to feel uneasy. The need for control is a deeply ingrained human instinct. Most people seek to control their environment in one way or another. Some do it through rules and regulations, others through social pressure and emotional manipulation. But at its core, control is about one thing: predictability. If a person knows how you will respond in any given situation, they can adjust their behavior accordingly. They can navigate interactions without fear of surprises. But if you are authentic, if you are someone who speaks and acts based on principle rather than social expectation, then you are impossible to fully control. And this terrifies people. Look at history, at politics, at religion, at family structures. Almost every institution thrives on predictability. Societies create laws not only to maintain order, but to ensure that people behave in a way that is foreseeable. The workplace rewards those who follow company culture, not those who question it. Families often pressure individuals into adopting certain values, not because those values are inherently right, but because they bring a sense of cohesion. And social circles subtly or not so subtly punish those who do not conform to group norms. Now introduce someone into any of these systems who does not bend to collective pressure, someone who does not modify their beliefs just to fit in, someone who is not desperate for validation. What happens? They are labeled difficult, uncompromising, even arrogant, not because they are wrong, but because they cannot be manipulated into compliance. And here is where the real test of authenticity comes in. Can you handle being misunderstood? Because make no mistake, if you choose to live honestly, people will misunderstand you. They will assume that your refusal to conform is an attack on them. They will interpret your independence as defiance, your confidence as ego, your decisiveness as coldness. Why? Because people project their own insecurities onto those they do not control. But here's the paradox. While people may resent those they cannot control, they also secretly admire them. The reason leaders, revolutionaries, and visionaries are often feared is because they embody a level of freedom that most people do not have the courage to embrace. They do not seek permission to exist as they are, and deep down, those who reject them wish they could do the same. So here is the question you must ask yourself. Do you want to be liked, or do you want to be free? Because you cannot have both. If you choose freedom, you will lose the approval of those who wish to control you. But if you choose to be liked, you will lose yourself. The choice is yours. The cost of being real is isolation. Authenticity comes at a price, and that price is often isolation. If you have ever wondered why being your true self seems to push people away rather than bring them closer, the answer is simple. Most people do not want authenticity. They want familiarity, comfort, and compliance. And when you refuse to fit the mold, you become an outlier, an outsider, a reminder that they too have compromised parts of themselves to belong. From childhood, we are taught an unspoken rule: fit in or be left out. It starts in school, where children who express themselves too boldly are often ridiculed or disciplined. It continues into adulthood, where workplaces, social groups, and even families reinforce the idea that those who do not conform will be treated as problems rather than individuals. And so, most people learn to wear masks. They adjust their behavior to match the expectations of those around them, not out of malice, but out of survival. But what happens when you refuse to wear the mask? What happens when you speak the truth even when it makes others uncomfortable? When you pursue your own path instead of following the one society has laid out for you? You find yourself standing alone, not because you are wrong, not because you have failed, but because people fear what they do not understand. The first sign that your authenticity is costing you is when people start distancing themselves without an explanation. Friends who once laughed with you now seem uneasy. Family members who used to support you now question your decisions. Colleagues who once respected you now find you too much. And why? Because authenticity disrupts the unspoken agreements that hold most relationships together. Many relationships exist not because of deep connection, but because of shared illusions. People bond over mutual complaints, over gossip, over shared insecurities. They reinforce each other's delusions because it is easier than confronting the truth. But when you live authentically, you do not participate in these things. You do not pretend to be someone you are not just to make others comfortable. And when you remove the glue of pretense, many of the relationships in your life will fall apart. This is the part no one tells you about becoming your true self. It is lonely. There will be moments where you question if it is worth it, moments where you wonder if it would be easier to just go back to the way things were, to shrink yourself, to pretend. And many do. Many give up their authenticity in exchange for belonging because the weight of isolation is too heavy to carry. But here's what most people miss. Isolation is not permanent. It is a transition. Yes, you will lose people, but only the ones who were never truly aligned with you in the first place. And as you continue to stand in your truth, something remarkable happens. The right people, the ones who see you, who respect you, who value you for who you are, not who they want you to be, begin to find you. Because authenticity is not just about losing people, it is about finding the right ones. So do not fear the loneliness that comes with being real. It is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are shedding everything that no longer serves you. And in time, what remains will be stronger, deeper, and more meaningful than anything you ever lost. Be patient, stay true, and remember, the cost of authenticity may be isolation, but the reward is freedom. The right people will find you. If you live authentically, if you refuse to conform, if you speak the truth, even when it is inconvenient, there is something you will inevitably face: rejection. People will walk away from you. Friends will grow distant. Opportunities will vanish. And in those moments, you will be tempted to believe that something is wrong with you. But here's the truth: there is nothing wrong with you. You are simply becoming too real for the wrong people. Most relationships in life are not built on deep connection, they are built on convenience. People come together because they share habits, interests, or social circles, not necessarily because they understand or respect each other at the core. And as long as you play along, as long as you do not disrupt the flow, you are welcome. But the moment you start to change, when you start speaking more honestly, when you stop pretending, when you choose growth over comfort, people notice, and not everyone will like it, because your transformation forces them to confront their own stagnation. It reminds them of the choices they are too afraid to make. And instead of growing with you, many will choose the easier path: to leave. At first, this will hurt. It always does. Losing people, especially those you once cared about, can feel like proof that you are doing something wrong. But it is not. It is proof that you are evolving. Because here is the reality most people do not understand. Growth does not push the right people away. It only pushes away those who were never truly aligned with you to begin with. The ones who respected the image of you rather than the real you. The ones who stayed in your life because you fit into their expectations, not because they valued your essence. And when those people leave, they create space for the right people to find you. But this is where patience comes in, because the process is not instant. When you let go of relationships that no longer serve you, there is a period of emptiness, a void, a silence that can feel unbearable. And in that silence, doubt creeps in. You may wonder if you made a mistake. You may feel tempted to lower your standards, to go back to old habits just to feel connected again. But do not give in, because this space is necessary. It is the space where real connections are born. The right people, the ones who will challenge you, support you, and respect you for exactly who you are, cannot enter your life if it is still occupied by those who do not. And so the universe forces you to let go first, to endure the loneliness, to sit in the discomfort, and to trust that better things are coming. And they are. Because when you are truly yourself, when you refuse to shrink or pretend, you do not attract the weak. You attract the strong. The ones who are not threatened by your growth, but inspired by it. The ones who do not need you to fit into their mold because they are too busy breaking their own. The ones who do not see your authenticity as a problem, but as a gift. But you must be willing to wait for them. Too many people settle. They accept relationships that drain them. They surround themselves with those who discourage their dreams, who mock their ambitions, who keep them small. And why? Because they fear being alone. Do not be one of them. The right people, the ones who truly belong in your life, are not easily found, but they exist, and they are also searching for you. The question is, will they recognize you when they see you? Or will you have buried yourself under layers of pretense just to fit in with those who were never meant for you? Because the moment you stop pretending, the moment you fully embrace who you are, something changes. You stop chasing people who do not value you. You stop begging for validation. You stop tolerating relationships that drain you. And in doing so, you send a message, not just to others, but to yourself. I am worth more than this. And when you believe that, truly believe it, the right people will find you. It is not a matter of if, it is only a matter of when.